You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Well, just another week in paradise. But we have a strong show for you today. My guests are really, at the risk of using a Trumpian word, fantastic. One is, you could say, the embodiment of contemporary adult womanhood, in that she faces complexities and challenges, some of which she thought she might have to, but others of which she never imagined. And the question then is what she did with them. She wrote a remarkable book, and we'll speak with her, Ariel Levy. And my other guest, well, you could say she's an embodiment of the future. She is something really else. That's Emily Temple Wood, and the woman who is transforming Wikipedia. So all that's coming up, but first we need to go inside those headlines. So yet another guy, tragically in need of anger management and sane gun laws, took an AK-47 and shot up GOP congressman at a baseball practice. Only in America, folks. And Jeff Sessions, the malevolent leprechaun, stonewalled and lied his way through Senate hearing testimony. No surprise there. Bloomberg News reports that investigators now believe Russian intrusions into U.S. voter databases and software systems occurred in 39 states. Trump held his first cabinet meeting almost 6 months after being inaugurated, which is yet another new record for incompetence. It was an unintentional comic opera in Maoist style, with everyone praising their fearless leader and extolling the blessings of being able to work for him. He joined them in praising himself. Any day now he could come out with a little red book of his sayings, except it would all be in pictures. He was busy hinting he might fire Special Counsel Mueller, to which idea his staff, as described by the normally not given to purple prose Washington Post, reacted, quote, hysterically, close quote. The Post did not mean laughter. Poor Trumpers. More than a dozen attorneys and crisis communications specialists have already started working for Trump Associates, a number that's expected to grow as more than 20 other senior campaign aides and White House officials begin receiving subpoenas, grand jury summonses, and other requests from Mueller and congressional committees. And we just learned that Trump himself is, in fact, under investigation for obstruction of justice. But while we're preoccupied with all crises Trump, it's highly dangerous to let us be diverted from seeing what's happening in the meantime. The Secretary of the Interior is formally proposing shrinking Utah's Bears Ears National Monument, evoking praise from oil and gas lobbyists and rage from the local indigenous nations and from environmental activists. Not since Theodore Roosevelt first established the idea of the national parks has anyone ever tried to reduce the size of any one of them. Item: Trump's first full education budget shows deep cuts to public school programs, ostensibly in pursuit of school choice, which in reality means private and religious institutions. Item: the SSHH, that's my initials for the Secret Senate Health Horror Bill, that could strip health insurance away from up to 23 million people, make changes to the coverage of millions of others, gut Medicaid, and affect 1/5 of our economy. Well, that's being crafted, as you might have heard, behind closed doors, with no hearings, no consultation with the opposition party, no public debate. This is not a dress rehearsal, my friends. McConnell has no shame, and he really is trying to sneak this through before July 4th with 50 votes plus the vice presidency. He doesn't need any Democratic votes. So our focus has to be on 2 Republicans. If he loses only 2 Republicans, the deal is dead. And those 2 Republicans for our focus should be Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine. both of whom have expressed reservations, and both of whom are affected and acknowledge being affected by the volume of their mail, faxes, and phone calls, especially, yes, from constituents, but if the volume's big enough, it doesn't matter. The appeals can come from anywhere. So we all need to focus on these two women. Please. Item. An anonymous survey conducted every 2 years found that 14,900 service members experienced some kind of sexual assault in 2016, from groping to rape. It's claimed that this is down from 2014, but sexual assault and harassment in the U.S. military is mostly underreported. And Senator Kirsten Gillibrand said, quote, "The truth is that the scourge of sexual assault in the military remains status quo. Today's report disappointedly shows a flat overall reporting rate and a retaliation rate against survivors that remains at an unacceptable 6 out of 10 for the third year in a row." Close quote. Item. While Trump faces criticism for blocking users who disagree with him on Twitter, people all across the country say they too have been cut off by elected officials at all levels of government after voicing dissent on social media. So this raises new questions over whether that violates constituents' First Amendment rights to free speech, and especially the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. I mean, it's akin to being thrown out of a town hall meeting for holding up a protest sign. How can we fight back on so many fronts, I hear you say? I know. It seems whelming, but it's not overwhelming, because there are more of us than there are of them. Besides, Trumpian hubris is on our side. You can always rely on hubris, as UK Prime Minister Theresa May recently relearned, having overplayed her Tory hand and lost her parliamentary majority. And it was the British youth vote, still pissed off about Brexit, that turned it around. And Emmanuel Macron was further validated in France with a vote that gave him a supportive, strong new parliament. It's way too soon to exhale that the wave of anti-immigrant nationalism is halted in Europe, but it certainly seems weakened. Attorneys General for the District of Columbia and the state of Maryland are suing Trump for violating the Constitution's emolument clauses by accepting millions in payments and benefits from foreign governments since moving into the White House. To date, 196 congressional representatives, but not one Republican, have joined the lawsuit. One of the first steps will be to demand, through the discovery process, copies of Trump's personal tax returns. Trump's travel ban executive order suffered yet another legal blow as yet another federal appeals court weighed in against the legality of the directive. And 5 officials have been charged with manslaughter over Flint, Michigan's water crisis. And Senate leaders reached bipartisan agreement to impose new sanctions on Russia. This is important because if Putin feels Trump cannot lift sanctions, or even keep harsher ones from being imposed, he just might let loose with whatever he's holding over Trump's urine-colored head. 55% of Americans now think Trump is abusing power, and 60% disapprove of how he's handling the presidency. That's what's happening in the meantime. We have to take a short break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. But when I come back, we'll be talking with a smart, extremely successful woman who somehow bought into the myth that you could have it all and discovered you can't. And then, what do? That's coming right up.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Ariel Levy, or Ari for short, is an American staff writer at The New Yorker magazine, and she also has authored a book a few years ago called Female Chauvinist Pigs, Women and the Rise of Raunch Culture. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, the New Yorker, Vogue, Slate, and the New York Times, and she is considered a very successful writer. Well earned. But then she discovered something, and out of it came the new book, The Rules Do Not Apply. Here's Ariel Levy. Ari, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, this is some book. The Rules Do Not Apply. And it is a memoir. And I have an insight into how this got started, because I remember when you came back from the Mongolia trip, and you told me that story. And remember, we had dinner, and you were writing a piece for the New Yorker at that point about it. And that piece, the Thanksgiving in Mongolia, went on to win the National Magazine Award for Essays and Criticism. That was in 2014. And since 2014, then you've been turning it into this book. And this is...
Yeah, I just felt like I had more to say, I just wasn't done.
And it is also so beautifully written. Right.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, that's something we've always talked about since I first met you, that, it's like these twin things. There's caring about feminism, and then there's caring about writing. And the reason I did this book is that I felt like, if I heard this story about someone else, I'd want to tell it, because it involves a lot of the issues I've been writing about for 20 years.
Yes.
Issues like, what does it mean to be a woman? And how do you live an unconventional life? And also questions, human questions about the fundamental conflict between the desires for adventure and novelty and stimulation on the one hand, and safety and intimacy and domesticity on the other. So anyway, basically, I mean, when I was 38, I went on a reporting trip to Mongolia when I was 5 months pregnant. And it was going to be this is, almost 20 years into a career as a reporter. So I was used to having these kinds of adventures. But it was going to be the last adventure like that for a while, because I was starting a different kind of adventure and going to be a mother. But on the second night I was in Mongolia, I went into labor in my hotel room. And I had my son, and for 10 minutes, I was his mom. Yeah. And he died before the ambulance came. And when I got back, I was so sad I could barely breathe. And I was stunned by how much it hurt, really. Like, I wasn't prepared for... Because I think we think, miscarriage, it sort of sounds like a medical misfortune. It doesn't sound like what it feels like, which is my child is dead.
That's right.
And so there was that, and it was sort of an identity crisis, because I felt like a switch had flipped in my heart while I was there, and I had experienced maternal love, so I felt like in the deepest part of myself like a mother, and a switch had flipped in my body, and I was making milk for a baby who wasn't there. So I felt like a mother, but I had no child. So it really was a kind of identity crisis, and I had to focus on the aspect of my identity that was still intact, which was being a writer, So that's what I did with myself.
The writing is what changes it from an exercise in justifiable catharsis, but nonetheless catharsis, into art. And so that on the one hand, it really reaches out to every woman in a deeply complex feminist sense, but also in a humanity sense. I mean, to everybody who's ever loved and grieved. But on the other hand, it's the transformation through the craft of the writing that makes it such a really fine book.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think the thing that's been interesting since it came out is that, a lot of interviewers have said to me, is the point of this book, that women can't have it all. Oh. And what I always say is nobody can have it all,
hello.
And people keep, and they say, did feminism mislead women? And I sort of say, feminism never told women you can have it all.
Exactly.
I mean, show me where feminism said that. Feminism said you as a woman are a full human being, and the human condition is that everybody doesn't get everything.
That's right.
So I don't agree. I don't by the basis of the question. But what has been interesting as a feminist is hearing from lots of older women in their 80s, about their miscarriages. Hearing from women who've told me, this was a really formative experience in many ways. Like this was really one of the more intense experiences of my life, and I never got to talk about it because it wasn't something that was spoken of when it happened to me.
If it were 6 months later or a year later, then there would be rituals for it. I mean, there would be funerals.
That's exactly right.
There would be some observance, some gathering of the community, whatever that woman's community would be, to observe I don't mean I'm not in love with rituals per se, but they're not stupid. On the other hand, there's a reason
that
the species invented rituals. And as long as they don't require a giving up of one's scientific knowledge and intelligence, I'm all for them. But they are to stop and observe the enormity of a moment. And we haven't done that for miscarriages.
We haven't done it for miscarriage, but I also think that tell me what you think about this. I think that we have sort of stopped talking, or maybe we never really talked, actually. Maybe there was like a minute where it was on the table and then it went away. I don't think we talk very much about these sort of primal parts of life that the human female animal, experiences, like menstruation, menopause, miscarriage, infertility, birth.
Well, you have a point, because I mean, at least at the beginning of this wave, I mean, previous waves dealt with this differently, but at least, in the 60s and 70s, I was lucky because I had a two-pronged approach. I could write polemic on the one hand, political prose, but I was also a poet, so I could put all of that stuff into the poetry, where it was safe, and nobody would say I was an essentialist or I was really not a feminist because I cared about the body. I mean, whatever the crap they would be saying. But then there came a period where, because women had been so defined by the menstrual cycle, by pregnancy, by miscarriage, by abortion, all of that. And then, of course, there was the abortion fight. Not that there isn't still the abortion fight. What it came to be was a kind of, yes, we know all that, but look at our brains, for God's sake.
It makes perfect sense that we've been saying, hey, focus on our brains, not our bodies. I mean, I think that was actually one of the rallying cries, literally that sentence at the Miss America, at the Atlantic City Boardwalk. But the fact of the matter is, these experiences, even if it's inconvenient to admit that they're a big part of being a woman, they are a big deal in the lives of half the human population, and we might as well talk about them, because it's not like we have a woman president. You know what I mean? It's not like not talking about these things has worked. I mean, it's worked a lot, but I think we're probably at a point where we can talk about these things.
I think we are, and that's also because the movement has matured, because it's global, where these issues count more and are more, front and center stage in, for example, the global South, and also because we've stopped reacting, and we're proactive now. We're not always reacting to, if they're focusing on my womb, then I have to focus on my brain. And we're instead saying, hello, I have both. You got a problem with that, Buster? In writing for the New Yorker, you've done some, amazing work. I mean, from Cindy McCain to Edith Windsor to Berlusconi. I never thought you'd live through that one. And in general, and your first book, which was Female Chauvinist Pigs, which I had loved so much, against pornography and all of that culture. So this is a real departure, though. I mean, to turn the lens
this is a real departure. It's funny. I kind of miss it. I kind of miss writing this book. I mean, it was like, it's like, I do. I miss it. It was like this. I mean, once it's out in the world, then obviously you're talking about it with other people, and that's its own thing. But when it's just you and your computer,
it's a form of postpartum depression, I think.
Absolutely.
Another kind of, and now it's grown and it's gone, and you wanted that. You wanted it to go to kindergarten and then on to first grade, But
I know, but I want it back.
I know. Well, I can tell you the remedy for that, my dear. You know what the remedy for that is.
Write another one.
You got it right away. What's been the reaction generally out there in the big world? You've been on a book tour.
Well, What's interesting is people are sort of big on like, oh, it was really brave to write about this. And the thing is, it didn't feel brave at all. It felt like this is the most, transformative thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I write about it? I mean, it didn't feel brave at all. It just felt like, because I think the thing is that, I think maybe it sounds to people like, oh, you're writing about miscarriage. But to me, what I'm writing about is, I think that part of the experience that I see people have, my friends have, of having children is that they gaze a lot at these people they made. I mean, it's amazing. You gaze at someone who came out of you,
yes,
who's like a human, and it's amazing. And, I only had my son around for 10 minutes. So to do that, I have to do it on the page.
Yes.
He's gone. So the way I got to gaze at him was, in writing.
Yes.
And that didn't feel brave. That felt like, of course, you know.
Well, and also heartbreaking because it was so short. But your writing gave him back to you in a way of claiming, in a way of, it's just infinitely touching without a jot of sentimentality. It has.
Well, I tried to approach it. I think that if you've been working as a journalist for 2 decades and you're used to like just sort of writing that way, I don't know any other way to write. So that's how I wrote about myself too.
Yeah. Well, it really works, Ari. The magazine article that you did was really focused on the Mongolia trip and what happened there and the loss of your son and a brief bit about coming back. And the book, of course, puts that then in the context of your life, which was, that of a smart, young, privileged, educated, white, not only
ambitious,
ambitious, first world person. All of those things, and a feminist, and a woman who had been involved with women and romantically and emotionally and sexually, and with men. So there starts with this feeling of all things are possible, and then in the in the discovery of the book, it is what we started out with is no, all things are not possible. But what do you do then about that? Not settling for simple answers or sentimentality. And that's where the strength of the book is. I cried when we first talked about it at dinner. I cried when I read the magazine article version. I cried now with the book. So you're very good for Kleenex business. You really are.
I am. That makes me really happy. I really like it when people tell me that they cry. I really do, because I just feel like it's so generous. It's like, it's like we connected, it's like I got to share my experience with someone, and that's really a pleasure. And I think that, the title, this idea of like the rules don't apply and everything is possible. That is what brings you things like the first Black president, the women's liberation movement, Edith Windsor, who you mentioned earlier, the plaintiff in the Supreme Court case that brought down the Defense of Marriage Act and effectively legalized same-sex marriage in this country. I think that thinking that you can look at rules and just decide for yourself whether you want to follow them and whether you think they're just, that is good stuff. That is where social justice comes from. But it's also the case that if you take that, to the not to the extreme so much as just, I think it's not just about an open mind. It's also about, I grew up in a generation where, there was no such thing as like an internet or a cell phone when I was a kid. And having in my little lifetime, there'd be this thing where the world's in your hand and you press a button and you can have whatever you want. I think there's plenty of room as a very privileged person to think, oh, I can do whatever I want. I can have whatever I want. And the body just doesn't play by those rules, I found that out.
Yes. But, but what
and I think it's a preview of mortality is what it is. And it's like,
very much so.
The
fragility of the flesh. It's
very much
what you've done with this is will last and is your ritual. That's what the writing of this was your rite. With
I think that's right.
RITE, and it's an incredible memorial to your son, my dear, as well.
Thank you so much.
Love you a lot. See you when you get back from the book tour. And thanks for being with us today. And thank you for The Rules Do Not Apply, Ari. It's a wonderful.
Well, thanks for having me. You're one of the many people who taught me to question the rules, you're one of my idols in rule breaking. So thanks for that.
All right. Well, we'll try to keep breaking them.
All right. Bye-bye.
And now it's time for the Surrealism Corner. Let's start with a factoid. 51% of Republicans oppose same-sex marriage. That's from the Public Religion Research Institute. Now, would it stun you to learn that Hitler's Third Reich used the United States as a model? Brent Staples, writing recently in the New York Times, made a reference to this that sent me off to swallow a Dramamine and glance through Mein Kampf. Sure enough, Hitler describes the United States as the, quote, sole state that made headway toward what he regarded as a, quote, healthy regime, one that was necessarily racist, close quote. Although historians have minimized the importance of that passage, archival research in Germany in recent years has shown that the Nazis were focused on Jim Crow segregation laws and on the criminalizing of interracial marriage and other policies that created or strengthened segregation, with white supremacy as a given and all other people characterized and treated as second class or worse. In a new book, Hitler's American Model, the United States and the Making of Nazi Race Law, Yale legal scholar James Whitman documents how Nazi propaganda assured the German people that Americans had racist politics and policies just like Germany, including, quote, special laws directed against the Negroes, which limit their voting rights, freedom of movement, and career possibilities, close quote. One propagandist actually wrote, quote, what is lynch justice, if not the natural resistance of the Volk, the people, to an alien race attempting to gain the upper hand, close quote. Whitman's book exposes the role played by American racism in the notorious 1935 Nuremberg laws, which stripped so-called non-Aryans of citizenship and the right to marry so-called true Germans. Perhaps this hidden history, now in harsh daylight, explains why some people still flaunt both Nazi emblems and Confederate flags, understanding viscerally, even if ignorant of this history, the inseparably linked meaning of both. And there are still Americans who protest the dismantling of Confederate heroes' statues and the taking down of Confederate flags. At least Germany, after the war, banned public displays of swastikas and other Nazi emblems. Factoid. In 2016, the coal industry gave 97% of its political contributions to the Republican Party or Republicans. But Americans are not the only crazy humans on the planet. In Jakarta, Indonesia, Rizik Shihab, leader of the Islamic Defenders Front, a powerful super-conservative hardline Muslim organization, has been caught up in a pornography scandal and an extramarital affair. Sexually explicit text messages and nude photos posted online may just have brought him down. Shihab and his organization have employed violence against Christian, Buddhist, and other religious minorities for years, smashing bars and restaurants and mounting intimidation campaigns at beauty pageants and at Playboy magazine. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, well, he's not all wrong there, but there's a big difference. Feminists objecting to beauty pageants or Playboy do so because we're against sexism. Shihab and his right-wing religious zealots are against sex. At least for others, if not for himself, apparently. And isn't it perfect that, after all, he loves pornography? Shihab, who has twice been in prison before for inciting hatred and using hate speech, says this is all a political plot against him. In closing the Surrealism Corner, back to the good old US of A and our own homegrown religious fundamentalism. Maddie Runckles, age 18, of Boonesboro, Maryland, had a 4.0 average at Heritage Academy, a Christian school. She was president of the student council, but she's not graduating with her classmates this month. She's been barred because she's pregnant. The school's decision to keep her from the graduation and remove her from her student council position went public because her family decided to seek help from a group called Students for Life. The anti-choice group argues that she should be lauded, not punished, for deciding to carry the pregnancy to term and keep the wages of her sin. The school said she would earn a diploma, but that they were also seeking to, quote, maintain commitment to what has classically been called chastity, close quote. Rick Kempton, chairman of the board of the Association of Christian Schools International, commented, quote, "She's making the right choice, but you don't want to create a celebration that makes other young ladies feel like, well, that seems a pretty good option," close quote. In 2009, the National Association of Evangelicals, drawing on figures from the national campaign to prevent teen and unplanned pregnancy, reported that 80% of young evangelicals engaged in premarital sex. A spokesperson for the evangelical group said its own research suggested the figure was much lower. I'll just bet. More than half of the women who have abortions, 54%, identify as Christians, according to the Guttmacher Institute. Maddie Runckles won't discuss who the father is. Apparently nobody will. And she hopes to go on to Christian fundamentalist Bob Jones University. Maddie, who announced her condition herself in the school auditorium, after which many students thanked her, now says she's being treated more harshly than students suspended for underage drinking and lying about that. She adds, quote, "I knew I'd face punishment because I did break the school code, but I told on myself and I asked for forgiveness. I asked for help. Some pro-life people are against the killing of unborn babies, but they won't speak out in support of the girl who chooses to keep her baby. Honestly, that makes me feel like maybe the abortion would have been better. Then they would have just forgiven me, rather than deal with this visible consequence." Period, close quote. Oh, Maddie Runckles. Bob Jones University won't provide the antidote to the surreal hypocrisy you rightly suspect. Only honesty and genuine support will help you face life as a single mom. But you've begun to question, Maddie. And that's always the beginning of freedom. We have to take a quick pause here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back in just a moment with a guest who will take us behind the scenes at Wikipedia. We all think, well, what we find there is true, isn't it? Or what if it's not? Or what if it's not enough? All those questions. So stay with us.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back. My next guest is a treasure. Emily Temple Wood, when she was 12 years old, began to transform Wikipedia. So if you want to hear about that, and you want to hear about her FU project, listen to Emily Temple Wood, also known on Wikipedia as Kaylana. Emily, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Emily Temple Wood, also known as, do you pronounce it Kaylana or Kaylana?
Kaylana. You got right the second time.
Kaylana, okay. Also known as Kaylana of Wikipedia fame and feminist brilliance. You were this 12-year-old kid. Oh, God, I love this kid so much.
So I started editing Wikipedia when I was 12, which is not terribly normal, but neither am I. I started writing about 12-year-old things, bands I liked, such like. I became an administrator, so I was very involved in all of the back-end work on the site. So stuff that you don't see that makes everything tick. But after a few years, when I started college, so about 5 years ago, I participated in something called Ada Lovelace Day. So Ada Lovelace was the first computer programmer, and she was awesome in every way. And
she was also related to Byron, as I recall, right?
She was his daughter.
Yep, there you go.
And and he hated the way that he'd become because of poetry, so he made her learn math and science, and So she's celebrated with Ada Lovelace Day, which is, on Wikipedia, we celebrate by writing about women in science and the history of women in science. And the Royal Society in the UK had put out all of their biographical materials about women scientists for free. And naturally, I was delighted. So I participated in this and wrote about some women scientists and realized that there was a huge content gap where we were missing all of these women scientists and something needed to be done. So being a Wikipedian, I started a project, and we started with about 1,400 or 1,500 women scientists, and now we've almost hit 6,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And and also it's the additional layer to this, which just blows my mind, is that when the harassment, which is an understatement, from the young white male trolls began to be so abusive, you sort of developed the FU project, kind of. Tell us about that.
And the name really is apt because, as I've said before, there's nothing that a misogynist hates more than a successful woman. And by turning their harassment into something productive, by showing that women do succeed and writing about their history, I'm able to turn it around and bring some positivity into the world.
And is it true? I mean, at least at first, in other words, you announced that every time you were trolled or somebody wrote you that they were going to rape you and cut you into little pieces and you deserved this and you deserved, for every single one of those, you were going to write a biography of a woman scientist, right?
Yes.
So that they then they then had to realize that they were willy-nilly, they were helping with women's history. This must have really made them crazy.
It really did. People were very upset about this, and it changed the tenor of the harassment that I got.
How so?
Funnily enough.
How so?
Well, it was less about me and more about the audacity of saying that women scientists were important. So I got a lot of harassment saying that, why would you waste your time writing about women scientists? Women have never done anything important. Neither have you, neither will you, that kind of thing, which is patently false. So I can ignore that pretty safely.
Right. But what an interesting tit for tat, in a sense, way of turning it back on them and saying, for every time you troll me, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. I mean, in your case, it was something online, but this is the kind of thing that maybe can be adapted and other women can pick up on, because it just frustrates the troller hugely.
It really does. And I've been doing it, if I get street harassed and I'm upset, come home and write. Because it's really cathartic to know that you can turn that nastiness into something that's worthwhile. Right.
What's happening online is so heartbreaking, because it really is the public space. It's bigger than any plaza or park. It's the world public space, and as if women and men of color and the disabled, I mean, any group that is not young, pale, male, and a bigot, if anybody except that is driven off, there's a real silencing. I mean, I know women, some of the gamer women who were trying to change gaming, who, because of violent threats to their kids, and research had been done on where the kids went to school. I mean, they just said, I don't go online anymore. This is the first really creative response that I've heard, and it's amazing.
Thank you.
And you're still at it, are you?
I am. I'm a second year medical student, so I'm a little bit busier than I used to be. But I do take the time to write whenever I have a spare moment. Last night I wrote about a woman pathology researcher who was the only African American in her department, because the 1950s. So I try to sit down. I also try to write about women's work, such that it is. I dabble in the textile arts when I have spare time. So writing about things that are traditionally considered craft and not art, because women do them.
Exactly.
yeah, that's something I also like to write about.
Wow. You know, Rosie Stevenson Goodnight, who is one of your colleagues, she's, I think, in her 60s, and she's California based. And so, and she's been on the program here. And she also is a feminist Wikipedian. And I think you and she shared the June 2016 Wikipedian of the Year award, didn't you?
We did.
You did.
It was a huge honor.
I
couldn't imagine anyone better to share it with.
My God. I mean, and Wikipedia, this, of course, I mean, all the work that women are doing there is making a real difference, because is it still, what's the balance? I remember at a certain point it was almost 90% of the editors were male, and so, of course, they tended to choose as subjects and then to write about the achievements of men. I mean,
Absolutely.
So has the percentage changed?
We don't know. Research is they're starting a new batch of research into it. Last I heard, but estimates range from 10% to 25%.
Women.
Yeah. So not parity in any way imaginable, and it really does show in the content, which is what Rosie's project is designed to counteract.
Right. And approximately how many edits do you think you've done? Must be.
I think 56,000, something like that. Last I checked.
Oh, only that. Well, gee whiz.
Yeah.
Well,
there are people with over 1 million, so it's small potatoes.
But Emily, for God's sake, you were 12. You started at 12. And besides, you're clearly such a lazy person. I mean, you're just lolling around.
Very lazy.
Yeah, you're just watching reruns all the time. That's clear.
Oh yeah.
And talk about the language proscriptions, not prescriptions, proscriptions at Wikipedia. Because on the one hand, it's like sort of with Facebook. I mean, if it's violently anti-female, you can get away with saying it. But if it's a 4-letter word, or if it's like a woman breastfeeding a baby, oh my goodness, you can't show a naked breast. I'm talking about Facebook now. But talk about that in terms of Wikipedia, the mystery of Wikipedia.
It's interesting, right? Because we have this policy that says that Wikipedia is not censored. But people get very uncomfortable with certain aspects of women's health, especially being displayed on Wikipedia. And, as a medical student, nothing bothers me.
Of course.
But I understand the need to, say, have an anatomical diagram of something as the first image in an article. That makes perfect sense to me. But people becoming upset over what they might consider a graphic image of childbirth or of a particular medical condition is baffling to me.
Yeah.
And
it's ridiculous.
And the articles on male genitalia have far more illustrations than the commensurate, female articles.
Yeah, of course.
Because obvious reasons.
Somehow it seems to me this should be a major priority for everybody. What do you recommend when people want to go on to Wikipedia and add something and change something, and how can women have more effect, do you think? Because this is becoming this is the world's encyclopedia.
And we say that if it's not on Wikipedia, at least for my generation, it's as if it doesn't exist.
That's right. I mean,
it's important.
I remember at first I did not trust it, because it just. I think it frankly was not that trustable at first. It was it was sort of like the Wild West. Anybody could put and then it grew up in large part because of people like Rosie and you. And perhaps, hopefully, a few principled guys there. So now it is really, it is the people's encyclopedia, but there are, not so much rules. There are standards. That's the word I'm searching for, of excellence and accuracy. Hello, that would be good.
Yes.
Which you need to rely on, because of course when somebody like Trump says, I got it on the internet, that's not necessarily a great thing. So
no, it's not.
So what would you recommend to women who want to have an impact, particularly?
You should join us, me and Rosie, and the scores of other women who are participating. Join us at Women in Red. Join us at Women Scientists. Women in Red has a Twitter feed. You can tweet at us at Wiki Women in Red anytime. We're always happy to answer your questions. I'm always available to women who, want to join in. But say hello. We're friendly, and we'd love to have you, and we'd love to teach you.
Oh, you are something else.
Thank you.
I don't know if they let you say badass at Wikipedia, but we can say it here. And you
well,
are
thank you.
a brilliant badass. What? And you're in your second year of medical school?
I am, yeah.
Wow. And what, are you going to specialize? Where do you plan to put your talents?
OBGYN.
In LBGYN. Okay, lucky women. Well, I tell you, you are just wonderful. We will watch for you on Wikipedia and elsewhere. And I think that since you're such a good writer too, honest to God, Emily, I mean, you have to be one of those people like C.P. Snow or who are doctors who also write, or writers who also are medical. You're very special, and I'm so delighted you exist. I hope you'll come back and talk to us more again.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me.
Time for one last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I will return directly with those fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again to some fighting words. Where is that first Republican who will stand up and say, enough? I will no longer follow the pack, issuing mild criticisms of my party's leader with a sycophantic chuckle. I will no longer collaborate in the policies and actions of this regime. It's not as if we don't know how this ends, Everybody understands that when that first representative or senator or cabinet member or party elder develops a spine and starts stuttering some truth, a second will step up, and then another, and then a great crowd rushing to desert the sinking ship in a contagion of courage, because by then it will be the safer thing to do. But where are you now, John McCain? You who have for so long coasted on past courage and pride at being a so-called maverick. You know now you'll never be president, but this is your last chance to change the course of history by your individual example. Why then indulge in dyspeptic, meandering comments and pound the Senate hearing room table in sclerotic rage to interrupt Senator Kamala Harris in her questioning of witnesses? Why? And where are you, Senator Lisa Murkowski, you who were defeated by Tea Party extremists in your Republican primary, yet dared run as a write-in candidate and win? Where's that defiance now? Where are you, Colin Powell, now when your country needs your voice? While their colleague lies in critical condition from gun wounds, not one member of his party, through all the cliché expressions of being united, coming together, one big American family, not a single Republican mentioned the epidemic of guns in this nation and its direct consequence, the epidemic of gun shootings. Our colleague might die, but we don't want to offend the NRA. We expect more from our legislators. We've already given up on the idea of the business world having any principles, but now and then even a cynic can be shocked at how deftly censorship under capitalism is conducted, corporate style. Easily cowed by criticism of the New York Public Theater's new production of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, American Express withdrew its support from the production, and Delta Airlines and Bank of America withdrew their financial support from the Public Theater entirely. Staged in modern dress, this production depicts Caesar as a Trumpish figure in appearance and mannerisms. According to both history and Shakespeare, this is a spoiler alert, Caesar gets assassinated. Well, that's not what the play is about, of course. The play is about power and its abuse, ambition, the eager willingness of the mob to be bought off by crumbs and rhetoric and lots more. Oh, it's also about husbands not listening to wives. For 400 years, in every country and language on earth, productions of Shakespeare have been and are staged to fit the reality of those times and places. The plays are eternally relevant. Julius Caesar has been performed in togas and tuxes. It's been set in Hitler's Germany and Franco's Spain, in a multinational corporation, in a failed state with an African warlord, and on another planet. I have seen it with an all-black cast, and not long ago in an all-female production set in a women's prison. In 2012, the acting company staged a production with an Obama-like Caesar. No one objected when Caesar was slain in any of these productions. Oh, some productions have been shut down. In the former USSR and its satellite states, in China, in Saudi Arabia. Portraying the assassination of a despot apparently is objectionable only to those who recognize themselves in the play. So what precipitated this latest corporate cowardice? Extreme far-right media, Breitbart, Fox News, etc., and Donald Trump Jr., who tweeted, "How much of this art is paid for by taxpayers?" and "When does art become political speech, and does that change things?" Junior, art is always political speech, though sadly the reverse is not true. Art always changes things, sometimes instantly, sometimes over eons. And political speech is constitutionally protected speech, as is art. By the way, artists are taxpayers, unlike your father. But the far right mumbled and many saluted. The National Endowment for the Arts, with funding already threatened by the Trump regime, felt compelled to issue a denial of any financial connection to the Julius Caesar production. And we need to let Delta Airlines, Bank of America, and American Express know that when they obey Breitbart and Fox News, they'll have to answer to us, the majority of their customers. It's not as if politicians or business magnates lack models of courage. Take artists, for example. Armando Cañazales left his viola at home when he went to the demonstration. He was 18, talented, a shining example of Venezuela's state-run program that draws and trains classical musicians from the country's working-class barrios. The Simón Bolívar Musical Foundation, known to Venezuelans as El Sistema, Spanish for the system. For 4 decades, the state-financed program has trained hundreds of thousands of musicians across social classes in an achievement unheard of anywhere else in Latin America and a great source of national pride. Its prodigy, Gustavo Dudamel, now leads the Los Angeles Philharmonic. But seismic spasms are polarizing Venezuela. So one day, Armando Cañazales decided it was time to join the protests. As teenagers throwing rocks retreated from a line of soldiers, Armando kept walking forward, alone, arms outstretched, palms facing up. Then the shots rang out with percussive rhythm. Orchestra members, including Dudamel, played memorial concerts for their young friend, and other musicians are now following his example, but this time with their instruments in tow. The world will never forget the image of a student standing alone and unarmed on a wide avenue, facing down a massive tank during the Tiananmen Square uprising. For me, that image is now joined with this one. On a recent afternoon, Willy Artiega, 23, painted his helmet the colors of the Venezuelan flag and stood with his violin in a crowd of demonstrators. He began to play the national anthem. Tear gas canisters exploded around him and the other demonstrators fled. But he stood there, alone, armed only with his instrument, facing a phalanx of riot police in full armor. And he played his violin. Where is the one Republican who can muster even a scintilla of Artiega's courage, who can keep moving forward through plumes of gas, facing riot police, blurred by acrid tears, barely able to breathe, but moving, still moving forward, still playing? Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and be sure to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag Fighting Words. And that's it for today. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMClive.com for the show, plus the archive of all our previous episodes, and at iTunes Worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to our show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. And you can check out my own website and blog at robinmorgan.net and find me on Facebook and Twitter, too. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton, and our founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us, and don't forget to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.